This game was played in the World Chess Championship of 2024 in Singapore on November 25. It was the first round, with white being Gukesh Dommaraju and black being Ding Liren. The game ended with Ding Liren winning with the black pieces. White begins with pawn to e4. Black replies with pawn to e6, which is the French defense. White continues with pawn to d4, while black answers with pawn to d5, directly challenging the center. White develops knight to c3. Black develops knight to f6, putting pressure on the pawn at e4. White pushes pawn to e5, gaining space. Black retreats the knight to d7. White plays pawn to f4, building a strong pawn chain. Black strikes back with pawn to c5, attacking the center. White develops knight to e2. Black plays knight to c6. White advances pawn to c3. Black pushes pawn to f5. White develops knight to f3. Black pushes pawn to a4. White plays bishop to e3. Black develops bishop to e7. White pushes pawn to g4, starting kingside aggression. Black moves queen to a5. White plays bishop to g2. Black pushes pawn to a3. White plays pawn to b3. Black captures pawn on d4. White pushes pawn to b4. Black moves queen to c7. White plays knight captures pawn on d4. Black moves knight to b6. White castles kingside. Black moves knight to c4, a powerful square. White plays bishop to f2. Black develops bishop to d7. White plays queen to e2. Black captures knight on d4. White recaptures with knight to d4. Black moves knight to b2. White plays queen to e3. Black develops rook to c8. White plays rook to c1. Black moves queen to c4. White pushes pawn to f5. Black responds queen to d3. White plays queen to e1. Black develops bishop to g5. White plays rook to c2. Black moves rook to c4. White pushes pawn to h4. Black plays bishop to f4. White plays queen to b1. Black captures rook with rook takes c3. White recaptures rook with rook takes c3. Black captures rook with queen takes c3. White plays pawn captures pawn on e6. Black recaptures with pawn takes e6. White plays knight to e2. Black captures pawn with queen takes e5. White plays knight captures queen on f4. Black recaptures with queen takes f4. White plays queen to c2. Black responds queen to c4. White plays queen to d2. Black castles kingside. The middle game begins with white playing bishop to d4. Black moves knight to d3. White plays queen to e3. Black captures rook with rook takes f1. White recaptures with bishop takes f1. Black plays pawn to e5. White plays bishop captures pawn on e5. Black responds queen captures pawn on g4. White plays bishop to g2. Black develops bishop to f5. White plays bishop to g3. Black responds bishop to e4. White plays king to h2. Black pushes pawn to h6. White plays bishop to h3. Black moves queen to d1. White plays bishop to d6. Black moves queen to c2 with check. White plays king to g3. Black captures pawn with queen takes a2. White plays bishop to e6 with check. Black responds king to h8. At this point black is clearly winning and white has no more threats. The endgame shows Ding Liren's queen and bishops dominating the board. White's pieces are scattered and unable to defend. The game ends with Ding Liren in full control and victorious. The lesson for beginners is that controlling the center is important, but pushing pawns too aggressively without proper support can create weaknesses. White advanced pawns on both wings but left them vulnerable. Piece activity is more important than pawn pushes, and black's knights and bishops were placed on strong squares. Finally, endgame technique matters. Ding Liren calmly converted his advantage into a win. Beginners should learn that pawn pushes must always be supported by active pieces, otherwise they become weaknesses that strong opponents will exploit. Thank you for watching this analysis. If you enjoy this type of content and want to see more explained games, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss anything.